Well, back when President Obama was candidate Obama, he promised total transparency during the health care reform negotiations. He even suggested during the campaign that C-SPAN should broadcast the negotiations because he said that all Americans should have a front row seat to watch this process unfold. But now reports are indicating that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid want to move the final stage, the very crucial final stage of the discussions between the House and the Senate into a smaller session behind closed doors. Now, that has prompted C-SPAN to send a formal letter to Congress today. They are requesting, once again, full camera access to all of the relevant negotiations to how our health care system will be changed in this country. And Shannon Bream is on this story for us live in Washington today with more. Good afternoon, Shannon.
Hi, Martha. Well, C-SPAN addressed its request to the top leaders in both the House and Senate, saying, listen, the network has already broadcast hundreds of hours of this healthcare overhaul committee meetings, floor debate. Now is not the time to close the doors. Brian Lamb, the founder of C-SPAN, is urging Senate Leader Harry Reid and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, along with the president, to allow the public full access to the final negotiations as this bill comes together. It appears Democrats are going to bypass a formal conference process where representatives from both parties would sit down and hash this thing out. Instead, it looks like they're going to ping-pong it. Now, to explain, that's when the full bill is sent from one house to the other. The second chamber then can make amendments if they want to and send it back to the original chamber, and that process can continue without ever having to go into a conference. And some say that is nothing more than an end run around transparency.
The difference between using a conference and using this procedure is that in a conference, the proceedings would be on C-SPAN, much like what happened during the negotiations over the stimulus. The Republicans were kicked out of the room for most of the negotiations and not allowed to participate.
It's not just conservatives and Republicans who have concerns. The co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva, says he is disappointed with the behind-the-scenes approach, and he has many concerns which he plans to voice during the Democratic caucus meeting on Thursday. No word yet on any response from any of the leaders to that C-SPAN letter, but of course, we'll keep you updated as things progress. Martha.
All right, Shannon Bream in Washington, thank you. Now let's go across the newsroom to Trace with some more on this story, Trace.
Yeah, for a lot more on this, is bringing David Drucker. He's a staff writer for the Capitol Hill newspaper. Roll call. You know, David, you look at this, and you might have heard what Shannon Bream was saying there, but now, you have Democratic leaders in the Senate and House saying, let's get together and blend this thing together behind closed doors, no cameras. I want to put up, because I think it's important for our audience, this is what the president said in January of 2008. That's what I will do in bringing all parties together, not negotiating behind closed doors, but bringing all parties together and broadcasting those negotiations on C-SPAN so that the American people can see what the choices are. Not exactly the transparency he was advocating 2 years ago, David.
No, Trace, and candidates, when running for office, often say silly things, and that was something silly, because there's no way you can negotiate a major piece of legislation, especially something around a subject as volatile as health care, and do it out in the open. There's just no way to get it done. And at this point, not only would it be difficult to hold an open negotiation, we're dealing with politics. The time for policy making is over. The Democrats have to figure out how to blend two bills in order to get 60 Democratic votes in the Senate and 218 Democratic votes in the House, and that's where they're at.
Yeah, but here's the thing, is you talk about, no, there's no way to do this. Republicans, a lot of them beg to differ, and it goes without saying the Republicans are going to be X'd out of this, but doesn't this also give Nancy Pelosi the ability to just kind of X out some of the problematic Democrats like Bart Stupak of Michigan, who wants stiffer language on abortion?
Well, yes and no. At the end of the day, whatever bill comes out of this secret, private, whatever, what have you, negotiation is going to have to get votes on the floor that will be public. And so if Nancy Pelosi needs Bart Stupak's vote, she's going to have to negotiate something behind closed doors that he will publicly support. So this doesn't really change the overall bill that she's going to have to come up with, or that Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid will have to come up with. What this does, though, is speak to the process that the president called for as a candidate, that Democrats campaigned for when they were campaigning in 2006 to take back Congress. They said they'd be more transparent. They said they'd be more open than the Republicans had been. And as all majorities are, they've been no less less secretive. They've done things the way majorities do them. And the only reason we're talking about this is because they set a higher standard for themselves that they themselves have failed to meet.
I got about 10 seconds left, David, but you know, the public doesn't really like this bill anyway. I know this may be politics as usual, but this doesn't look good when you're the American people looking from the outside in.
No, and if the American people like this bill, they wouldn't care how secretive the negotiations were. The problem is right now they really don't like it.
David Drucker from Roll Call. David, good to see you. Thank you, sir.